So, good morning. I believe I'm talking to Dr. Hezron Makobe. I would request that you help us with your ID. Sergeant Atam. Yeah, we need it because we don't know whether we are talking to a clone. So we want to welcome you to Kisumu County Assembly Appointment Committee, which is responsible for the vetting of the nominees by the governor. So we'll start by introduction. But before we do that one, I would request that the clerk administer an oath. Article 195 of the Constitution gives the Assembly the powers of the High Court. The same is given to us by the Approval Act. So when you are seated here, whatever you say can be used against you or alongside your wish in a court of law. So are you? So proceed, clerk.
Do solemnly and sincerely swear that every word that I shall utter before this committee is the truth and nothing but the truth, and that every statement and declarations that I shall make shall be made conscientiously, believing the same to be true and according to the oaths and statutory declarations act. So help me God.
We are going straight to the introduction. My name is Elisha Jacoraro, Speaker of the County Assembly of Kisumu and the Chair of the Appointment Committee. On my left is the Clerk of the Appointment Committee. I want us to start from here. Honorable Member, can you introduce yourself? Just have the microphone next to you there.
Good morning. My name is Honorable Lumumba Wade, MCA Southeast Nyakash, a member of the Appointment Committee. Welcome.
Good morning, Dr. I'm Honorable Karen Odhiambo, member representing Shauri Moi Kaloleni Ward, also a member of this committee. Karibu.
Good morning once again. I'm Jennifer Ubonyo, MCA representing Southwest Kisumu Ward, a member of Appointment Committee. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mheshimiwa Eunice Alando, specially elected MCA. I'm also a member of this committee of appointment.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Honorable James Ochengo Molo. I represent West Nyakach, a friend of the committee. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is James Oyugibere, MCA for Nyalenda B Ward, also a friend of this committee. Thank you.
Honorable James Were and Rojoso Molo, there are some 2 seats here. So you come this side or you sit behind there.
Good morning, Daktari. Joaquim Okech Swaga, MCA Kondel.
Good morning. I'm Honorable Ruben Okoth Rakwach, MCA Kolua East, and a member of this committee. Thank you.
Seth Okumu, MCA representing East Semi and a member of the committee. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Vincent Jagongo Chopper, MCA for Northwest Kisumu Ward and a member of this committee.
Good morning. I'm Akoth Okombonere, MCA representing Manyatabi and the Deputy Speaker. I'm a member of this committee.
We have our Hansard team, the other side and here, and our communication guys. We want to ask you that you feel free and relaxed because we know you're a resident of Kisumu based on your ID, and what we are going through is a normal vetting process. And we wish you the best, that the response that you give will assist the committee to make a decision. Now it's your time to tell us about yourself. You'll tell us whom you are. And as you tell us whom you are, you will also try to convince the committee on why you feel you are qualified for this job. That will take you around 3 minutes. As you do that one, I need your original testimonials. Sergeant Atam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You switch on the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for welcoming me here. Thank you very much, honorable members. My name is Dr. Hezron Otieno Makobewa. I am born and bred in Kisumu County, Ombei Ward, Muoroni Sub-County. I am medical doctor and physician by profession. I am a businessman in this town. I am a philanthropist. I'm Anglican by faith, married with 2 children, and I'm a supporter of Nottingham Forest Football Club, for those who are in football. I think that this job offers me an opportunity to contribute to the development of Kisumu County. I believe that my not just professional experience, but also my acumen in business administration, as well as leadership skills, should equip me to be able to improve the lives of Kisumians, because we know the big problems that we have in this county in terms of revenue collection. Just to summarize a little bit what my background is, I have worked in public administration, having run the NGO Coordination Board for 3 years. When I got there, the annual revenue turnover of the NGO Coordination Board, which at that time was looking after 6,500 NGOs, was about 48 billion. In 3 years, I moved it to 152 billion and increased the number of NGOs to 10,200. And that is available on record through the NGO Coordination Board website. In addition to that, I am currently chairing the biggest sexual and reproductive health organization in this country, Marriage Stops Kenya, which is 38 years old. I have been the chair of that board now for 6 years. When I started 6 years ago, our revenue turnover was just under 1,970,000,000. Last year, we breached the 2.6 billion mark, with 80% of that funding coming from our revenue channels, which are the products that we sell and the services that we offer. So we've been able to actually do it. Thirdly, I also sit on a board which I chair of Advitech Group, which is a South African Joburg-listed company in the stock exchange. And the company is incorporated in Kenya here, and are the owners of the McKinney School brand, which they bought in 2018, and that is how they gave me that job. They also own Crawford International School in Tatu City, for those who are familiar with that. I've been able, under my leadership, to move that brand from 1,800 students down to 5,200, and we are turning over over 1 billion shillings. So, and locally, at the local level here, I'm a local businessman here, having run and I continue to run businesses in the hospitality industry, in the health sector, and also in the development field. So if you put all that together, then I think that I should have the requisite qualification and acumen to deliver on this great opportunity, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. Maybe before we proceed, there's one question. I've noticed that in your questionnaire, you have given the month of date of birth, but in the ID there is no month. Where could you have gotten it?
I think that, well, the month of my date of birth is for my birth certificate, but the IDs, I don't know whether the IDs nowadays have got date of birth. That is how the ID was given to me in the early notice, so.
Yeah, I'm seeing your ID was issued in May 2012. 2012.
No, I think that was just a replacement of the new look ID. The old ID, which is the ID number which I have, that was actually when the old IDs were being replaced with the new look IDs.
My ID is not very far from yours in terms of age, but it has a date of birth. I'm asking that one because I've seen several questions when it comes to the duration of work, when it's questioned on the date of birth as it determines.
No, I think the ID that I have is which was issued by the Department of Registration of Births, and I think that one, I picked it up in Nyalenda B when they were being replaced in Nyalenda, I think in 2012, when I took back my old ID, which is the one which I got in the early 90s, I think.
And you didn't provide us with the birth certificate copy?
No, I don't think it was a requirement, but I can avail that later.
Yeah, because it's good to confirm the same.
That's fine. That's okay. I do have my passport as well, which has got my date of birth. I don't have it with me here, but I can provide that in a soft copy before the end of this session.
Now, Dr. Makobewa, you provided us with a brief history on whom you are and where you work. But I want you to bring it to the reason why we are here. In 2022, the Kisumu County Assembly did some amendment on the Kisumu County Revenue Administration Act. And now it's called the Kisumu County Revenue Amendment Act 2022. And with regards to education, your education, and the position that you are seeking to work, I would just want you now to clarify to members that in line with that, what is your capability? How sure are you that you are able to deliver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, as I said...
In summary, let me say, what is your educational background in regards to revenue management?
I am a medical doctor by profession, having read my first degree is Bachelor of Medical Science, in which I attained first-class honors with distinction. Then I read Doctor of Medicine, which is MBBS, and later went on to do my postgraduate training to be a consultant physician, as is presented there in my documentation. Further to that, I've recently also completed a master's in global health, which from the University of London, Queen Mary. In regards to actually being the chairman of the Revenue Board, the requirement was for me to have a recognized degree, but also it goes on to say that you should have experience in public administration. I have worked in the public sector and I've got vast experience in the private sector, actually working in areas where we are improving revenue growth, as I had enumerated in my previous answer.
Now, you've heard of the discussion now going on in the country regarding the Finance Bill 2023. There is that proposal to introduce the 3% mandatory deduction to a housing fund. Now, assuming that the county government of Kisumu provides residential housing to its employees, and the county government claims deductions in relation to capital and maintenance of the rental houses, how will you tax the house benefit?
Obviously, the housing levies are really hot topic in the country at the moment. And if you remember, Mr. Chairman, this was not started with the current government, it started with the previous government, where they wanted to charge 1.5% from the employee and 1.5% from the employer to raise, at that time, 50 billion shillings for 250 to 500,000 houses. The new finance bill now has increased it to 3% because they're aiming to raise about 9 to 10 billion a month. From your question, I'm not a tax expert, but what I can say is that if each employee has got a house allowance, normally, if you live in a government house or a county house, then I think you can annualize that rent if you're paying, if the rental has been, valuation is 15,000 shillings, for example, therefore it's 180,000 shillings in a year. If the employee has got a house allowance of, say, 25, which is 300,000, you can tax the 180,000, which is the 12,000, 15,000 times 12, which is the value of the monthly rent from the house. Or you can actually, the county can actually deduct what they want to charge for the rent from the house allowance and then tax the difference. I don't know whether that makes sense. So in other words, if it's 300,000, if it's 25,000, which is what the employee is entitled to, times 12, which is 300,000, and you're charging 15, so you get 300 minus 180, which is 120, then that can be taxable. But obviously, from where I sit, I would get further guidance from tax experts. But I think from my rudimentary knowledge, I would use that as a guide.
Karen, you have something? Joachim, okay, before Honorable Karen?
Yes.
Yeah, just sit, just sit.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, this is just on the general knowledge, because we have interviewed several nominees, Mr. Chair, and I was just looking at the net worth of Daktari here. I think this is one of the highest net worth I've ever come across here in Kisumu County. So, Daktari, I know we know each other from the political field, and I'm just worried because when you look at your net worth, it's estimated around 500 million. Probably I know it's more. You just wanted to be fair to us, but I know it's more. And so, Mr. Chair, my question is, I don't know, because he's also a very serious businessman in town. So I don't know how he's going to balance the two, owing on the demand of this particular kind of job, because Kisumu County has a very serious gap when it comes to revenue collection. And Daktari here is a serious businessman. He has a lot of things to look at. I don't know whether he will be able to get enough time to look at the business which is close to 1 billion and also help us Kisumu County to raise on our revenue. I don't know whether I can respond to that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Candidate, we have availability, owing to the fact that you are a very busy person and it's proven by your net worth.
Speaker, just on the same, so that he sum them up and respond to them.
Proceed.
On the same net worth, could you just break it down for us, the 500 million? Is it in terms of assets? Is it in terms of money in the bank? We need to know.
Thank you.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Joachim, Honorable Joachim. I think the first thing to say is that, traditionally, if you want to get any work done, you give it to the busiest person. If you want something done today, you give it to the person who has got 10 things to do. People who have got very little to do will postpone urgent matters and do them tomorrow or the day after. That is how to be actually efficient. In terms of what net worth or what people own, the net worth is actually calculated based on actually what you've got fixed and movable assets, as well as maybe you can have cash. I think everybody knows me in this town that I'm a businessman. We own properties together with other business people, both locally here within Kisumu and outside Kisumu. We also own properties out of Kisumu in Siaya and in Nairobi, but also having worked and lived out of this country for 20 years or so, we also own 1 or 2 properties outside the country. So the value varies depending on how the market is. Sometimes can be high, sometimes can be low, depending on what the inflationary rate is. So I think what Honorable Joachim said, 1 billion is, I think, a bit above board. So in terms of being available, Mr. Chair, I think that the businesses that we run have got professionals running them. We sit as directors, whether it's the hospitality or the health or the NGO or the other sectors that we are in, we've got professionals running those businesses so that we are only providing oversight. So I think for me to have presented myself for this post, I am quite interested in seeing the development and progress of Kisumu. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Summit, you're satisfied, Honorable Jagongo?
Yeah, okay.
Yes, Honorable Sir.
Chair, just on the same, before we proceed on the form, on potential conflict of interest, I have heard Dr. mention that he has businesses in Kisumu and businesses that he has also listed, and is going to be the chair of Revenue Board, which means even those businesses that he's owning are supposed to pay revenue to Kisumu County. And I believe that's a conflict of interest that needs to be declared. Because how then will you address the issue of your businesses paying revenue to Kisumu and also the chair? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, nominee.
I think, thank you. I think that the way to look at it is that the people who collect taxes at the national level, KRA employees, they also pay taxes themselves. So somebody has to do that job. I think that is a very good thing, that I believe that people who are who understand the problems that we have in this county should be people who are either business people or people who work in this town who actually interact with the stakeholders on a day-to-day basis. So I think from where I sit, with or without this job, my companies or organizations are expected to also pay a fair share of what they owe and receive the services. So I don't think that is Mr. Chairman, in the public domain. There is nothing to actually hide about it. I don't think that we'll be able to get any undue advantage of not paying a trading license or a liquor license because I am on the board or I'm the chair of the Kisumu Revenue Board. Thank you.
Is it all the same? I want, so let's, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Makombewa, one of the functions of the Kisumu County Revenue Board will be to ensure that that county tax revenues are accurate and paid in a timely manner. Kindly explain how you would handle a situation where a business entity within the county is disputing a tax invoice?
Thank you.
Did?
Thank you. I think that the first thing for me to say is that even at the current rate, even in the businesses that I run, sometimes I receive wrong invoices from Kenya Power. You've had people getting wrong Kenya Power bills, or people getting wrong Kiwasco bills, or even at the national level, you've also seen big companies having tax disputes with KRA. I think from where I sit that one of the biggest problems why our revenues are actually low in Kisumu is because of what you call stakeholder engagement. And stakeholder management involves that when there's a problem, then through the team, because the Kisumu County Revenue Board is going to have 7 or 8 members. Myself, there's 5. There is the Chief Officer Finance, there is the County Attorney, and all of us under Secretariat headed by a CEO with a Secretariat will ensure that such a businessman is invited, they come with their invoices, they explain their nature, and it is looked at, but most importantly, it is negotiated to find out whether it was wrong billing, and then we can apologize. If it was the correct billing and they can't pay, then you manage the stakeholder or the taxpayer to ensure that you agree on a way of actually resolving the dispute. My view is that the only way to improve revenue is not to intimidate, is not to threaten, is not to harass, but rather to actually ensure that the stakeholders understand why they need to pay their share of taxes to improve services for them. So there will be a dispute resolution mechanism, I presume, which exists, which can ensure that such matters are actually resolved. The same way if you have a billing problem with Kenya Power, you can go and have it actually discussed and resolved amicably.
I noticed Honorable Ruben. Proceed.
Yes, I have a question for our nominee. What are the sources of revenue available for the county government of Kisumu?
That's straightforward. Should maybe 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think that we do have many streams of revenue in Kisumu. I think the biggest ones that I can talk about is, for example, the trade license is a big one. We've got rates is a big one. We have got signages is a big one. And of course, we've got sort of like markets, such as places like bus park. So those are big revenue avenues for us here. And of course, when you take parking as well, not just car parks, but also reserved slots, as well as prepayments. So those are big revenue sources that we have within the county. Then obviously I can say that in Kisumu, when you look at what our source of revenue is, you can see that the Department of Health is actually the biggest contributor, contributing nearly 40–45% of the total revenue that we receive. So I'll just mention a few of those. And obviously the last one to say is maybe we do have some little revenue from things like liquor licenses and maybe inspection. Thank you.
Maybe 2 questions. One, in your projection, you just say that health provides almost 40–45%. Is that going to be your standard, assuming you get the position? And two, how do you plan to deal with the issue of land rates?
Thank you, Chairman. I think the first thing to say is that at the moment we are collecting just over 1 billion, 1.1, 1.2, if you look at the last 2 or 3 financial years, against a projection on the fiscal paper of 1.8 to 2 billion. And we've got a deficit of 700 or 800 billion. I personally, we can double our revenue to 2 billion by simply improving the systems and efficiency. And I'll give you an example of the bus park, where we are collecting 84 billion a year, which is about 7 billion shillings a month. If you break that down further down, it's about 250,000 shillings a day. During the municipality time, Honorable Okello, I think, used to collect 550 to 600,000 shillings a day. So the question for the Revenue Board under my chairmanship is that what has happened? Are there fewer cars? Are there fewer travelers? I don't think so. I think it's the stakeholder management which is happening there. One of the things that I expect to actually do as the chairman is to actually involve the stakeholders, for example, at the bus park, to actually understand. And the stakeholders are the people who own vehicles there, people who work there, the revenue authority, which is ourselves, as well as the passengers who actually come there, to actually see how we can actually improve that. And the only way to do that, in my view, is to actually make it more efficient and have more awareness campaign. The second thing you say about land rates and land rent is a very emotive issue in this county. One of the biggest things we have that every time this matter is broached, we have various people coming in with various views.
Order. Honorable Nerea, can you consult in low tones? Yes, proceed.
On the land rates, my view is that we need to update our valuation role and to make sure that the mapping which has been done is actually accurate, and so that we can also create more awareness on people who actually own property here, to understand why we need to collect those taxes, but also to get the political will to actually work with us together, because we must take a multifaceted approach to ensure that that succeeds.
Honorable Joachim.
On the same issue of revenue, I just wanted to hear from the nominee if he will be bold enough, because the dynamics in town has changed, and that is why you see less of town service vehicle and more of border. So it's like the border is taking over the transport sector within the CBD. So will Dr. be bold enough to actualize and implement the border collection, because they are currently not paying anything? Thank you.
Yes, nominee.
Thank you, Honorable Swaga. Actually, if you look at the country as a whole, it's estimated that about 900,000 to 1 million border. If you work that one backwards, then you're looking at about 20 to 25,000 borders in Kisumu County, Mr. Chairman. Of those, possibly 18 to 20,000 are the ones who are in border business. The other 5 or 6,000 are being used by private. And that is based on NTSA registration figures. One of the models which has been employed in Kigali, and you guys have gone to Kigali a few times, why do border people in Kigali actually pay the equivalent of 40 or 50 shillings per day? It's because they get a cashback. Because the stakeholder engagement and management is very key. What I think we should do, and what I will try to implement, is to actually engage the border sector into realizing that by contributing 30 or 40 shillings per day or 1,000 shillings a month through their basis, I can give them half of that money back, Mr. Chairman. So you contribute 30 shillings per day, which is 1,000 shillings a month. I will give you 500 back. And how do I get you the money back? I will ensure that the governor, through his manifesto, came up with universal health care through Marwa. 18 to 19% of everybody being given waivers at Jaramogi or district are actually related or is a border person, their wife, their child, or their nephew they live with. We're going to make sure that you give me 30 shillings per day, which I am not going to put a string when you're passing with a passenger. But borders are organized into bases. Those bases have got 10 to 15 people. Every morning, through our automated platform, the chairman or the base leader will actually pay that money. At the end of the month, we'll make sure that through Marwa, each person has got an NHIF card. We get a multiplier effect, because instead of giving them waivers now, we can also claim back that money at district or at Migosi. And actually, I think we can raise in excess of 250 to 300 million shillings. It is doable. You don't have to even force people to do it. The people in Paponditi or Muoroni or Kombewa will hear what is happening in town, and they'll just want to opt in, because you will be you'll be killing two birds with one stone. So that is something which we are trying to put into policy. We'll try and put into policy and work with the assembly to see whether it's something which is doable, and we try it. You don't try, you don't get. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Honorable Jennifer.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Makobewa, what is the relationship between the Kisumu County Revenue Board, the governor, and CC member of Finance and Economic Planning?
In relation to the Act, Amendment Act 2022, the CEC Finance has got the overall responsibility for the Revenue Board. The governor, the CEC obviously reports to the governor. And in terms of the hierarchy, then we can say that you've got the governor at the top, then you've got the CEC Finance, who is responsible for appointing the 5 members. The governor appoints the chairman. The Public Service Board interviews the chairman and recommends to the governor, who brings to the assembly. And the CEC of Finance will appoint the other 5 members of the board. And the board is actually a creation of powers which is bestowed on the CEC Finance from the PFM Act 2012, I think, Section 157. So I think that is where maybe they all come together in terms of hierarchy.
Who will be responsible for the policy making or changes? Because you just presented a very good plan on the border sector, but it requires some policies. So is it you, is it the governor, is it the CEC?
No, our job as the board is to advise the CEC Finance on how best we can improve the revenue, and we come up with potential policies. They can then, this is then canvassed, and I'm sure everything then ends up within the legislative arm of government, which is the assembly, to actually ratify it and make sure that it's put into law, and we can actually then effect it.
Honorable Mumba.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Secretary, it is true that pawn source revenue is key part of financial and economic drivers within the county. Would you please inform this committee some of the attendant reasons why the county may have failed to meet its revenue targets for the past 2 financial years? 2, the County Assembly recently passed the Kisumu County Revenue Amendment Act 2022 that established a board to manage revenue. Kindly inform this committee the role of the city board in collection of revenue within the city in line with the Urban Areas and Cities Act 2011.
2 questions.
Thank you. I think I'll start with the. I will start with the first question. I personally believe that the reason why we've missed our revenue targets in the last 2 years, the intrinsic reasons can be related, one, to COVID, because we had COVID in 2020, 2021 to start off with. So that actually dipped our revenue. The second thing which I can say is that coming to 2022, we also had our campaigns and elections, and normally what happens during electioneering year, very little business happens. Then post-election, we continue to actually rumble. So those are sort of like the intrinsic factors, I can say. But if you want to look at it deeply, then you can see that perennially, we are missing our revenue targets by nearly 50% compared to our forecast. And this is because of the inefficiencies that exist in our revenue collection currently. One is that we still have got manual sectors where we collect revenue through manual systems. This is very inefficient. It's prone to fraud. It's prone to corruption and bribery. And then secondly, we also have got a culture of non-compliance. If you're in this town and you've done business in town, there are a sector of the society who feel that I won't do it, there's nothing you can do about it. We need to actually work on that to actually bring those people on board so that we improve compliance, a culture of compliance in the sector. And of course, I also want to say that the other reason why we've been unable to actually meet those revenue forecasts is because our revenue officers themselves, when they get employed over time, some of them don't get trained, so skills within the human resource of the revenue department also needs tweaking. We need to train them more so that they're actually up to date. And then lastly, we need to really go to where people are today, which is automation. because we are happy to use mobile phones to do banking, to do everything, but when it comes to actually raising revenue through automation, then there's resistance. People said in the past that when mobile phones came that secretaries were going to be a thing of the past. We still have secretaries now with mobile phones. The same was said with M-Pesa and mobile banking, that banks will close branches. Banks still exist. So I think for me, automation is lack of automation. To your second question, the City and Urban Act is an offshoot of, I think, the Constitution 2010, Article 184, which gives direction in terms of forming of cities, municipalities, and towns to bring governance down to the levels, and it defines what makes a town and a municipality. At that time, in 2011, devolution was just coming when this act was first, I think, enacted. And of course, part of the function of the city board, which is, I think, 11 members, and I think 5 or 6 of them or all of them come to the assembly here, is to collect levies and fees and taxes, I think, other than giving policy direction and other than also formulating how services can be improved. In regards to how it intertwines with the Revenue Act and the board, what the City and Urban Act says is that the collection of fees and levies and taxes are delegated responsibility from the county government. One would assume, I would assume, I'm not a lawyer by profession, that the enactment of this Revenue Board or Amendment Act actually gives not more power, but gives more responsibility to the board now to be the biggest or the sole person, entity, corporate entity responsible for collecting revenue. So we will work with the city board, which exists, to actually help us collect that revenue. But our function is to assess, collect, and account for revenue, working with other stakeholders, of which the city board is actually part of that. I don't know whether that makes any sense.
Yes. You are satisfied? Honorable Eunice?
Thank you, Chairman. To our nominee, Daktari. Kisumu County has recently established an automation of revenue collection system in order to upgrade the revenue system to achieve integration and information sharing in so as to enhance efficiency and effectiveness of the system. Kindly explain your understanding of the benefit of revenue automation system within Kisumu County.
Thank you. Automation is actually the future. If you look at our lives today, everything we do is automated. I am sure even Mr. Speaker, the chairman, rarely goes to the bank. You know, he can do his banking on his mobile phone or on his laptop. What automation of our revenue will do has got many phases. The biggest one of all is to actually improve efficiency in the collection system, and efficiency in terms of reducing human error, in terms of reducing tax evasion and fraud, in terms of reducing corruption. The other thing is that it is going to actually enhance data quality. Now, data is king. If we want to actually find out why certain markets are doing better than others, we can actually have a platform or a dashboard which actually tells us what is happening at Kibwe. As we sit here now, we can track it every hour or every minute. Using that data, we can improve what's happening in Paponditi or in Katita. So automation will give us that. The other thing is that it will actually improve a client experience, because then we can actually, you can pay using an app, you can pay using your mobile phone or USSD, or you can pay using a portal, or it gives options for the taxpayer to actually be able to pay for their dues on time. And the other thing about automation, which is really key, is that it's a good way of tracking targets and achievements. If you've got somebody who is in charge of car park on Oginga Dinga Street, we are selling two things on Oginga Dinga. We are selling the space for the car, and we are selling time. Now, what happens in town here at the moment, once you've paid 100 shillings, you can park on Oginga Dinga from morning to evening. Okay? The same person, if you've parked maybe on Angawa Street or further down, you also pay 100 bob. It doesn't work like that in cities, really. If you want to be closer to the CBD, you should pay slightly more. So we should sell the space, which is you've parked, you pay 100 shillings for the first hour or two, and then if you want to stay for 3-4 hours, then maybe 50 shillings for every 2 hours or so, because we are also selling time. What automation will do for us, automation will ensure that we can be able to actually track what income we are getting from that income stream by actually also reducing fraud. But lastly, I want to say that the reason why everybody resists automation is people think that we are going to lose jobs, that the revenue officers are going to be jobless. And of course, I know members of county assemblies would not want their constituents to actually become jobless. On the contrary, automation will ensure that our revenue officers can actually be skilled enough, and we can be able to meet our targets and actually pay our bills. So I'm just going to stop there.
On the basis of your presentation on selling of space and time for the case of maybe parking, what happens to the business owners who pays permits and licenses, either yearly or monthly, and you being one of them, and you want to park next to your premise, or what happens to it?
I think that if you live in big cities, if you, for example, banks have got designated spaces where they pay monthly or yearly, I'm assuming at the moment that they're getting a discount for ensuring that that space is already sold for the rest of the year. So they are given a small discount compared to, it's like if you're if you're using the expressway and you've got the ETC card, then you get a 15% discount by paying upfront for several trips. So for those people, they will not be affected. I think what should happen is that everything we do in this country is affected by the bottom line, which is the cost of living. If things are going up, our rates have to actually go up in line with inflation, having been ratified by the Assembly. But I think the ballpark figure for me would be that I don't think it's very fair for somebody parking on Oginga Dinga the whole day to pay 100 shillings, as opposed to somebody parking 3-4 streets behind. So I think for everyday users, they should pay based on space and time. But for the long-term users, they can be given a discount based on the fact that they're actually prepaying as an incentive.
Honorable Eunice?
Okay. Daktari, along with that, for the county government to match in performance with the growth and expectation of its constituents, it must dramatically increase its fiscal debt without incurring costly recurring overheads. What are some of the methods that you would put in place to increase the county's fiscal debt?
I think for us to improve our revenue and fiscal debt, we have to start a new system of transparency and accountability. We have to be accountable to the taxpayer on where their money is going. And I'll give you an example. If you are at bus park and we want to move bus park from 250,000 a day to 500,000 a day, the people working at bus park must be able to know why, what that money is going to do. So the first thing we need to actually ensure is that, can we put for them functional toilets there, which are actually functioning? Part of that money is going to fix that. Can we put for them proper fire exits, which are designated? Do we have a first aid point where if something happens at the bus park, people can get help there quickly? Do we have proper drainages there? Do we have proper, cabros there to make sure that when it rains, it doesn't actually get flooded? Transparency and accountability, in my view, is really key in improving revenue. The other thing is awareness. research now shows across the world that people are happy to pay more when they're actually aware of what they're paying for. If you are in a rural constituency or ward, people are not interested in what's happening at Kibuye or Bus Park, but they're really, really interested in what's happening in their ECD or what's happening to their access to the local hospital. So ensuring that there's proper public awareness on where the taxes are going is one way of actually winning the war. And as I said in the previous answer, that automation is key in actually ensuring that we can improve efficiency and actually expand the tax base. Expanding tax base in this way means that there are certain areas where we are not collecting tax. And I'll give you an example. Border, as was mentioned by Honorable Joachim, is an area where I think we can raise 150 to 200 million using a formula that is acceptable to them. That is a tax base we can actually improve. The other one is actually cess. I mean, there's a lot being said about cess. There's a lot of political interference and a lot of lack of goodwill in collection of cess. If you think about, I think somebody was telling me, Mr. Chairman might correct me, that for every trip of sand or ballast, we should be collecting either 500 or 1,000 shillings when it leaves the quarry or whatever it is. And I'll give you a typical example of way bridges in Muhoroni and Nyando. I was told that because we've got West Kenya, Butali, and Sukari Industries having way bridges in Nyando and Muhoroni, we don't charge cess on those. Apparently that cess is charged by their respective counties in Kakamega or Vihiga or Homa Bay. I don't think that is right. Those are areas where we can actually look at, because the cane is grown here. The farmer is actually from Muhoroni or Nyando. That money actually belongs to us. So I think if we automate such services, then things will be able to actually improve. If we are more transparent and accountable to the taxpayer, then I think people will be able to actually pay more.
Honorable Mumba.
Secretary, I like the way you have explained the automation, particularly the parking. But you're aware that the other source of revenue, for example, the market, how will that work effectively, for example, in Kibuye or Awasi? Because I've seen these revenue collectors with the cash machines. Some of them, they just pay receipt when they see an inspector or an officer. But whenever there is no body on watch, they will take the cash and don't give a receipt. How are you going to deal with that?
Thank you. I think there are three ways of improving markets, like Ahero or Awasi or Katito. If you are going to automate, the biggest problem with using gadgets at the moment, even in the county here, is that the revenue officer always says that the machine is not working today. You also are not sure that the receipt that you are being given is either their own self-made receipt or is actually a genuine receipt. We need to get rid of those. A good management, revenue management system has got what we call redundancy. And redundancy is what you get when you go to a hotel and you actually pay using a PDQ machine. The PDQ machine is offline, but it can still you can still pay with your card. What redundancy does is that it still allows real-time tracking of the money that you've spent at Les Savannah on a PDQ machine, and you get a prompt on your phone to say that Les Savannah has charged you 5,200 shillings for what you've done. We got to build that in our system, number one. Secondly, the biggest thing that we must do is training of our revenue officers so that they understand and then they can actually meet their targets. When the trader is involved in the revenue collection and the officer is aware the trader is involved, there's going to actually be less theft. I don't believe that we need to insist on these old-fashioned machines. People have got mobile apps now. People have got USSD codes that they can use, and also building redundancy in the system with good supervision will ensure that there is real compliance. And you give targets. Everybody works with targets. If you work at one of my hotels and you're the manager, there are targets of how much you're supposed to, how much business you're supposed to bring in before you actually get paid. This bill that we have got, this amendment bill, has got in it that all of us, the chairman and the other board members and everybody, will be paid allowances based on the targets which has been set by the CEC or financed and ratified by the Assembly. We don't meet the target, we don't get paid anyway. So I think for me, automation will help us, Honorable Mumba, in doing that through training those guys, and also what I keep on saying, which is the stakeholder engagement, which is the trader in Awasi knowing what they should actually pay for. And lastly now, in Nairobi, for example, they have got what you call transponders. And transponders are actually like the way you have CCTV, the way you have CCTV in towns. If you've been to Israel or you've seen it in Israel, everything is really monitored. If you put CCTV 2 or 3 even in Awasi, for example, and these are cameras which use laser, Mr. Chairman, what they do is that they can actually be able to take a snapshot of the population even in the market to actually average, to actually give targets. So even people are trying to cheat, you can reduce it by 60 or 70% or even more. So hopefully I think it's a work in progress, but it's a possibility that we can actually achieve.
Honorable Joachim.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Daktari, I have a feeling I know you so well. Sometimes I feel you're overqualified for this job. And sometimes I think I keep on changing my mind. We need you to also help us, improve our revenue. But if you say yes, we'll be happy with that. Daktari, I know you are not going to be the CC. You're just going to chair the board. But I know your major task will be to...
Just a minute, Honorable Joachim. At the time, I want you to close that door. The members can use this door. It's going out. Proceed.
Thank you. I know your major task will be most of the time to advise and make recommendations where necessary. But of course, you understand in your job, there will be some amendments based on your advisory to the CEC. And just like you mentioned, we'll be able to pass some of the amendments that shall have been proposed from you. So I don't know whether you will be able to understand that most of the amendments will be money bill position that you are going to have, and the fact that it is a revenue board that mostly touches on money. So what is your understanding of a money bill, and could you be having just a brief of the procedure that will be required maybe while amending the money bills before it's brought to the Assembly? Thank you.
Proceed.
I think that the money bill or the budget or the fiscal strategy paper, in my understanding, has to conform to the constitutional requirement, which is the Constitution 2010. And of course, we've got the PFM Act 2012. And we've got also the County Government Act. In preparation of the money bill, the CEC of Finance, in my view, after public participation, must actually consider certain things. And the biggest one of it, I think, is what is called fiscal responsibility. And fiscal responsibility is the barometer which looks at the debt level. Is the debt sustainable? For example, in Kisumu, how much do we owe in pending bills? How much do we owe in banks? How much do we owe somebody else? And then the expenditure. What do we want to spend for this year? Are we making sure that the key sectors like development are actually looked after? Kisumu is one of those counties where we are breaching the law in terms of how much we are spending on our wage bill, which is nearly 5.2 or 5.3 billion compared to development and others. The other thing which the money bill should consider, in my view, is actually sustainability. And sustainability here means that we need to look at a few years, the today, the tomorrow, and the future, medium to long term, the same way we are discussing the finance bill in Nairobi. Particularly for this time, as we speak in Kisumu, we know that there are 3 or 4 factors which is going to affect any budget that the House will pass. One of them is the cost of living. which has completely gone up. Why? Because of energy prices and the war in Ukraine, which is known to everybody. And then two, following COVID and the election, a lot of people have lost their jobs because certain sectors of the economy have actually closed down. So I think those have to be considered through, obviously, public participation, which is key to make sure that what is presented to the Assembly actually meets the constitutional threshold, the legal threshold, but most importantly, there's a fiscal responsibility in how we are going to manage our debt, our expenditure, and also how we are going to forecast our revenue to make sure that we can actually pay for ourselves. So in layman terms, I think maybe that would be my understanding, depending on which jurisdiction.
Yes, sir, Honorable Seth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to stand and raise my questions. Dr. I'll ask you 3 questions. One, I'll go back to my issue on conflict of interest. And I know that at one point you had contested to be a governor of Kisumu County. And I believe that dream has not died. And I just want to know how that dream will affect your position as the chair of the board in raising revenue. 2, you know, sometimes, especially for those tasked with raising revenue, do it so much that they forget that some of the sources of revenue are actually service providers in the county. Case in point is health. Even though we treat health as a revenue stream, but we know health is a service provider that should only get as much as they provide. You only pay for the services. It should be cyclical in nature. How will you treat such institutions that provide services and are also considered revenue streams? Lastly, Daktari is on public participation. The Constitution, and I want to be specific on Article 174, emphasizes on public participation. Whatever charges we want to lay on people, whatever method of raising revenue that we want to implement must be taken to the public so that they give their opinion. Could you please just highlight some of the principles of public participation in management of revenue in Kisumu County? Some of the principles of public participation. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, candidate.
Right. Thank you. In terms of conflict of interest, I think, you know, politics is it's like playing sport pesa. You know, you can try twice or thrice like myself and not succeed, or you can try for the first time like Fujo and succeed. So it's a game of chess. I think everybody's ambition and plans of life depends on the timeline. It doesn't mean that politics define us, but politicians are also have got their own profession. Some are doctors, some are accountants, some are lawyers, some are social scientists. So I think for me, as a leader and a manager and administrator and a medic, I think that when the time for politics comes, then I will make my own informed decision, as I've always made. Those haven't succeeded as of yet. But I don't know what tomorrow brings. I might change my mind and say that I'm no longer interested in politics, or I might change my mind and say that, well, I'm going to try something else. So you never know. So I cannot really know what I'm going to decide next. But I think for now I'm concentrating on those things which are important to me. And actually for this job, my view is that it gives the residents of Kisumu and myself an opportunity for me to make a viable contribution, a developmental contribution to serving the people of Kisumu. In terms of health as a big driver of revenue, and as I said, if you look at our revenue reporting, health is giving 400 to 500, I think 450 million a year to our tally of 1 billion, nearly 45%. I think that one of His Excellency the Governor's manifestos or covenants to the people when he got in 2018 was improvement of the infrastructure in hospital facilities. I have also seen today, Mheshimiwa, that an article in the paper in which we are about to actually hand over Jaramogi to the national government. I think personally that's a good thing, because that is going to unlock 3 billion shillings to Jaramogi per year as a government, as a body corporate. And you know that health is taking nearly 3.4 billion of our budget per year in terms of just salaries alone. So if they take Jaramogi and bring 3 billion for us, we will gain more, because we are spending a huge amount of money in a place like that. But to make sure that health continues to function, I think we must make sure that we invest in the infrastructure and the facilities, and also we work on the human resource to make sure that we've got less strikes. But I think from a revenue point of view, only about 62%, Mr. Chairman, of everybody who has got NHIF who goes to a county facility uses that card. Because of staff issues, some people have got these cards. They stay in hospital for a week, not having declared. It is too late for us to claim that money. We end up losing that. So one of the things we're going to do is to actually work with the health department to reinforce that, to make sure that those who have got cards, we can actually claim it as soon as they actually arrive. We run private hospitals. We are very efficient in how we actually collect money from NHIF. So I think it's something that we can actually improve. Lastly, the issue of public participation, in my view, I think that public participation is akin to the bottom-up model that the Kenya Kwanza is talking about, where the grassroots people at the bottom need to make decisions about what the government is doing for them. Instead of the budget just being done in a silo, actually, we ensure that we give access to the normal public to be able to get this information. So the first principle for me is that there's got to be accessibility for everybody in the village to access that information. The second thing is that you must give people adequate time. Instead of the chief saying that tomorrow the county government is coming to Mbeyi to actually read the budget, people need to be given adequate time and planning to actually be able to come and express their views. So I think that is really important. The other thing about public participation and why it was put in the Constitution is that we've got minority groups. And minority groups can be as people who are disabled, young people who are 15 to 25, like the youth, the women who the government wants, the Constitution wants to actually prop up in leadership, and that is why we've got more nominated ladies in Assembly and the National Assembly. So public participation ensures equity, brings equity to the decisions which are actually being made in terms of just how revenue is actually being expended. We don't decide which road to do. They decide which road, they decide how bursaries should be distributed, or they give their input into it. So I think that is what my response would be.
Yes, Honorable Jagombo.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions. The first one, just for the benefit of this committee, I know you've taken an oath, and I've gone through the EACC form and also on your biodata. And you've told us that you have a master's degree in the EACC form and also on the biodata. But on the physical paper that you've presented, we can't trace it. Maybe you can help me know where the physical paper is. That is one. 2, you served between the year 2012 and 2015. You served as the chair or the CEO for NGOs, and you were coordinating the board activities. Can you share with us some of the achievements that you got during that time? Then the last one, we all know that Governor Nyong'o had 10 points agenda in his manifesto. Can you also tell us around 5 or 6 legacy projects that you can get from the manifesto, from his manifesto?
Yes, proceed.
Right. Anyway, Thank you very much. I think in terms of my education, as I said, I have got a BSc degree, which is there. I have got a medical degree. I have got a postgraduate degree, which in the UK it's called PMed-B, which should be there. In Kenya, the equivalent of that degree is what they call Masters of Medicine, M.Med. In the UK, it is a Royal College exam, which is called PMed-B. That is there. Thirdly, I've just said that when COVID actually came, I had a lot of time in my hands, so I enrolled for a new master's degree in global health at University of London, Queen Mary. I have completed that now. Even if I get this job, in 2 months' time, I'll have to fly to London for the graduation ceremony. And that is also ongoing. And I've actually noted that there. So those are the postgraduate qualifications that I have, Mheshimiwa. Okay. When I ran the NGO board in 2012 and 2015, as I said at the beginning, I found 6,300 NGOs registered with the board. I moved that number to just under 10,500 in 3 years when I was at the board. The annual turnover of NGOs in the health, agriculture, and education sector was 48 billion. I increased it steadily to 158 billion by the time I was leaving in 2015. And this is actually the amount of money that the government has to sign off for all this money which is coming to do HIV, malaria. This is the kind of cash. That money all comes in through by the Treasury CS, plus the Interior CS now, who is in charge of the NGO Coordination Board. The third achievement which I had at the board when I was there was what is now fintechs were coming up and startups, the governor wanted Kisumu to be a place where you can also have young people, incubation centers. I think Rotary was built exactly to do that, and I think there's been a lot of training which is going on in the Department of Tourism and Trade actually achieve that sort of thing. And then obviously we've got other development which has come, like the lakefront development project, where the governor and his administration, where Kisumu has got a very well developed lakefront with 5-star hotels and as a tourist destination. So I think those are the few which I wanted to actually mention.
Yes, Honorable.
This is in regard to the answer that you've given to Honorable Nyagongo. Of course, it is obvious that for this position, they needed a minimum qualification of bachelor's degree. That master's or doctorate would be another advantage. We have your document from recognition and equation of qualification for bachelors, and you've talked of masters. In regard to this, because if you have masters, then you will still take it for this certification, which you have not done. What would be your wish? Do you recognize your masters, or we go by the bachelors?
I think my tertiary education fulfills the requirement for this degree. In my folder, the folder, if I think we provided the folder, there is a document in the folder which is given by the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council, which is a general practice. In which we have educated thousands of children. We continue to do that. My philanthropic work is very evident within the county, including Jaramogi Oginga Hospital there. We run a festival program for women who have festival there for 7 or 8 years. I ran the Buckets Reform, the child cancer clinic there for 7 years, dealing with Dr. Dorothy Nyamosa. If you go to a head of county hospital, the theater there which is being used by the county is my theater. We donated that. The second theater was brought by the Italians, but the first theater in the building there belongs to me. The same with your place in Yabondo Mission Hospital, the theater which is being used to do cesarean sections there is mine. And it's dotted across. Obviously, I've done more even within town here in the Weather's ward, St. Mark's School. Is that in your ward? Boyton ward. So if you go to St. Mark's School, you find it's a chairman. The ablution block there with 12 toilets. That is my philanthropic work. If you go to Kudo, where Kudo is in Railways ward. So if you go to Kudo as well, there's a big 16 toilets there, which is done by itself. I continue to do philanthropic work outside my politics.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I only have one question for the nominee. And I want to ask that Kisumu County always allocates more than 35% of its budget to personnel emoluments against the provisions of the regulation number 25 of the PFM Regulation 2015. What, in your opinion, are the reasons for non-compliance? And finally, if given the task of being the tax collector of the county, do you think you will be able to do something meaningful to reverse the trend? Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I think the first thing to say is that at the moment, using our current budget, I think we are spending 42% of our revenue or our total income on the wage pay, which is about 7% above 35% that we need to do. The provision in the PFM Act Regulation 35 requires the CEC Finance and the Assembly to ensure that we don't breach the 35% mark, and if it's done, then the CEC Finance is supposed to provide evidence of the reasons for that deviation to the House and explain how that is going to be corrected and give reasons. In my view, there are three factors. I think the first factor is that when devolution came, Mr. Chairman, we took over, I think for Kisumu we had the municipality, we had the county council, we had the town council. We took over the wage pay, which was already existing in the different municipalities. So of course that was already big. When devolution came, services were duplicated. So the new governors or the new political leaders also employed new staff. So as they continue to employ new people, the rate will continue actually rising. And lack of political will, in my view, is one reason why these numbers keep going up. Politicians don't like sacking staff. They like actually just adding. If a new person comes, if Dr. Mokobewa is the governor, they would want to actually also just fix in their people, and the list continues that way because of political interest. Of course, that is a bigger, complex issue. And the other thing, as I said, is the fact that we inherited quite a lot of stuff from the different units. So, and thirdly, of course, the other thing that we fear, and I saw it with the governor of PC trying to do it, is HR transformation and rationalization. It's a very, very difficult thing to accept or to do to actually ensure that do we really have all these people, or some of them are just names which don't actually exist. In terms of trying to see how we can correct that, I think the crux of the matter is that if we can raise more revenue, the more revenue we raise, the more fiscal space we can have to actually be able to make certain decisions. And in fact, even the members of the county assembly would rather have more money available for them to actually do development projects if we raised more revenue. At the moment, we're really constrained with the level of revenue that we actually raise. So to correct this, in my view, is to actually ensure that one, we improve our revenue, and then two, we start that dialogue at the national level, whether it's at the COG or the controller of budget, to see how best can we actually handle a bloated workforce, and what guarantees do we have that tomorrow, when Honorable Were is the governor, he's not going to actually continue employing people. It's a very difficult mix, but I think for me, the answer lies in raising more money to actually do more development for our people. And until that political will exists to make any change, it's going to be a hard sell.
Is there any member with any question? If none, we come to the end of this session. What is it, Honorable Secretary?
Thank you, Chair, and to register my apologies that I was held up submitting something. But first of all, I want to congratulate the nominee for having been appointed as the chairman of the county revenue board.
It's not yet
Subject to.
Honorable.
I am not subject to approval of this.
Point of order. Point of order. Honorable.
Yeah, the nominee is subject to interrogation by this committee, which will thereby represent to the president. So I don't know what the problem is. You have the military mind of the government. It's a legislature.
Honorable Secretary, just go straight to the point.
Yeah. Bring yourself the legislative role of the government. Mr. Makobewa, I have seen your TV, which is very impressive. And if possible, as I am projecting that you are appointed as the chair of the county revenue board, we have an existing staff in the revenue department whom you are going to work with to ensure that revenue is enhanced within Kisumu County. This is a challenge because these are the staffs which were there during the defunct local authorities. We recruited some on contract basis, and there are challenges, being the fact that they were recruited so as to enhance revenue collections, which is yet to be realized. In your view, if you were given this job, will you be able to work with these staffs to ensure that revenue is enhanced, being that they are just the same people? The command is the one we will be new, being aware of the facts that we tried to automate revenue collection and it has not worked. Will you be able to work with these staffs to motivate them without increasing their salaries, because that's not your duty, but to motivate them to ensure that revenue is collected? Because revenue is a challenge. Even in towns, when we are doing our budgets, we project revenue, but it's not realized. That's we end up with pending bills. That's my challenge, Mr. Makobewa. Thank you very much.
Yes, candidate.
Thank you, Chief Whip. I think the first thing to say is that the mandate of the Revenue Board, apart from collecting revenue, is also to work with the CEC of Finance and also the Public Service Board to actually recruit new revenue officers. We can also redeploy or transfer existing revenue officers across the county. But most importantly for me, the biggest problem we have within the revenue department is actually lack of incentives. For me, our job is not to intimidate, as I said, or threaten or to sack anybody, but our job is to make sure that where we feel that there is skills deficiency, our role will be to make sure that we can train these people, to make sure they understand what their duty is. Of course, we are subject to targets. We have to meet certain targets to remain relevant and to remain on our jobs. So we will actually push hard to make sure that the staff that we have who don't have skills, we give them skills. If we feel that there's skills deficiency, we will actually go to the Public Service Board to actually recruit new revenue officers in sub-counties or in markets or wherever we need to do them. And lastly is to make sure that there is better supervision of the revenue officers to ensure that there is compliance and we reduce fraud and theft. But by and large, I think we all mean well, both the executive and the assembly. If we work together, then we can actually have a better discussion by the end of the year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. Honorable members, we come to the end of this process. Number one, I want to confirm here that I've talked to the clerk, and as at 17th May 2023, 4 p.m., we had not received any petition or memorandum from the public or anybody else whomsoever regarding the nomination. I've also confirmed that if any could have arrived between 17th to date, we have no petition or memorandum from anybody regarding the process that's going on. Now we want to give the last chance to the nominee. 3 things. One, you are unanswered. Whatever you said, you started by taking an oath. So we want you to tell us that assuming the committee gives you nod and the assembly resolves that the governor can appoint you, in the next 100 days on your assumption to office, what shall be your achievement? Then number two, you are aware of the targets that have been set in the own source revenue in the last, say, 3 years. Assuming that you get a nod to be the chair of the Kisumu County Revenue Board, in the next substantive financial year, what will you deliver? So 2 questions. 100 days and then the next complete financial year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that if I take over on this post, my first job would be to actually look at the other 5 board members who are to be appointed by the CEC. And once we've been inaugurated into office, will be to actually sit down with the Revenue Department and the CEC working together to find out where they are at the moment. We do a SWOT analysis of what we actually need to do in the next 3 months. And I think the next 3 months, we don't have a lot of time to actually learn. We need to hit the road running. Will be to come up with short-term and medium-term targets of what we can actually achieve, what we can correct quickly, and the lessons that we can actually learn. Where we have deficiency in resources is to work with the CEC to see how those resources can actually be availed so that we can actually start straight away. But I feel that in the first 100 days, we should be able to have come up with a good revenue collection, not just the policy, but also looking at how we can actually do automation, which is what the controller of budget wants every county to actually do. And we should be up and running. In terms of, sorry, Mr. Chairman, what was the second question? Your mind has gone blank.
I've just talked of 30 days and 100 days and next full financial year.
Yeah.
What will you deliver?
I think for me, we need to have baby steps, but I think at the least, I think that doubling our current revenue in one financial year is achievable. So we can get to 2 billion shilling mark by simply improving efficiency and tweaking a few things. We want to make sure that we can report to the public and to you on a monthly basis on a revenue tracker to bring us to actually bring transparency to see whether we are actually meeting those targets. I think 100 billion shillings a month is what rural counties are collecting. We should collect 200 billion shillings a month, and we can track it and be able to have this discussion. That will be my suggestion to the CEC Finance, doubling the revenue.
I think the average is 1.5, so you are saying 3 billion.
Yes.
We come to the end of the vetting, honorable members, and I need the certificates of the nominee back here. So if it's in your desk, please give the Senator time to bring them here before I close this session. All the certificates. So I want you to take them back to the nominee to confirm them. But we are giving you in 1 minute. You have anything to tell the committee?
I think what I can say, first of all, is just to thank the panel for being very robust and friendly. It's my first time here. We appreciate the work that you do. Being an MCA is not a very easy job, and I think it's a learning curve. I just want to thank you again for being really on time and making this as painless as possible. Thank you very much.
Dr. Hezron Makobewa, we wish you the best. The committee shall be retreating to consider your responses to their questions. And given approval, we wish that you'll do what you've said. Otherwise, it will be the responsibility of the committee and finally the House to decide on whether they agree with you or not. So you are free to leave at will. The Secretary will help you. Now, members, we come to the end, and I'm going to the next agenda. Before I go to it, ensure that you fill your marks and leave it in the file. Your panelist number is the way we had agreed, the number that appears on the notice. AOB. If none, then the meeting stands adjourned. We will communicate the date and venue for the next meeting. Thank you.